Welcome to the House Doctor. Today I'm going to show you how to fix your water softener when you have the E1 code. The E1 code on a Culligan water softener usually means the motor or the piston is stuck. Hopefully all we have to do with this one is take it apart and clean it, and we'll be good to go for another 20 years. Let's find out. This water softener happens to be stuck in the backwash cycle, so we're going to take care of that first by putting it in bypass mode. Next thing we're going to do is cut the power, unplug the unit. Now we need to start disconnecting some hoses. This unit has two lines running to it. The first one is this small black line that comes from the brine tank. That you should be able to just unscrew with your hand. It's not very tight, and you can just get that out of the way. The next line is this gray line. This goes to the drain line somewhere in the house. Water's going to come out of here when you disconnect it, so be prepared. Now we need to remove these screws. There's one here and one on the other side. Now everything's disconnected, we should be able to just pull the unit out. A little gray wire here, and pull that off. When you're moving the tank for the water softener, be careful. It's very heavy and it's very unstable because it's completely full of water. Now we're going to unscrew the head unit. It shouldn't be that tight. These things, you're not supposed to put a wrench on them when you put them on, so let's see if we can get it loose. Okay, we're off. Let's take it up to the workbench and see if we can find out what the problem is. Now that I have this thing off and on the workbench, we probably could have disassembled this while it was on the softener. Looks like we have a couple of screws to take off inside the unit, right here, and down in here. This piece comes off, that slides freely, that's good, so that's not our problem. Now there's another screw back behind here that we need to get out. And off comes the motor, and you can see there's a little shaft here. This white shaft here should pull out. Okay, has a screen on it. We'll clean that up before we put it back together. And now our motor's off of our head unit. Now that we have it all disconnected, I'm going to plug this in and we'll see if it works or not. Alright, I'll push the regeneration button. Okay, our motor's turning and it's moving through the cycles, so that's good news. That means our motor is okay. This shaft here was turning and moving, so that's good. This shaft right here must be the one that's stuck. There we go. And out she comes. Yeah, it's very difficult to move. I can't Imagine that little motor being able to move it. I don't know if you can see in there, but I have some dirt and debris, and this is kind of cruddy. Before I take it and clean it up, let me pull this cover off. See what we have underneath here. Okay, we have another little screen, and it looks like that's it. So I'm gonna clean this up. The main valve here was what my problem was. It was stuck. I have it all cleaned up and it's moving freely now. But what I discovered while I was cleaning it is each of these little sections here unscrew. And as you unscrew it, there's a seal and an O-ring. So I took this completely apart and cleaned all these seals and put it back together. The main section, if you take the top off, this is where the seal is that keeps the water from coming out. You can pull the plunger out. If you do take this apart, just make sure you put everything back together in the same order. It's not that hard to get this apart. I just had to put some screwdrivers in. Some of them were a little tougher than others and break it loose. But comes apart fairly easily. Instead of using some fancy Culligan water softener rebuild kit grease, I'm just going to use petroleum jelly or Vaseline, and I'm just going to goop this up so it can move freely. A little bit of Vaseline in your water is not going to hurt anybody. This metal shaft has one end that sticks out a little further than the other end. The smaller end goes in and connects onto the plunger. I'm gonna grease that up. Put that on there, screw this in. And I'm guessing these things don't have to be very tight. Just snug them up a little bit. A little grease on all these O-rings so everything slides together easier. Alright, O-rings on our other plunger. Don't forget your little screen. Mine was pretty filthy. I cleaned it up. I didn't bother taking this off. This was moving freely on mine. There's a little snap ring right here that you could take off if you needed to. Raise this big white dial up a little bit. But mine was okay, clean enough. I'm just putting a little Vaseline on the O-rings. Head unit. Put this little screen back in here. A little more Vaseline on the seal. Whenever you have a metal plate like this that you're tightening down with a seal behind it, tighten these down in a circular pattern, snugging them a little bit each time. Next, we're going to put our cover on. Slide in the white shaft in here, then put our gearbox back on. You have one little screw that goes in here. I'll tighten that down all the way until you get your slide in. Next, we have to put this piece on. There's a notch on there that hooks onto the shaft coming out of the housing, and then this long slot goes onto here of the motor. Slide that on, pull it up until it goes onto the motor. Then we can slide our rail on and put our two large screws in. Once you have all your screws in place, you can snug everything up. Be careful when you're tightening up these two large screws that the rail here isn't crooked, because the white part needs to be able to slide back and forth. Now that we have everything back together, we're going to test it. I'm going to plug it in and hold down the status button until it displays service. It takes about 10 seconds. It doesn't actually say service, it says SER. Press the plus button and it'll say TES. I'm guessing that stands for test. Hit the status button. Mine says NN 3.7. I'll hit the status button again. Shows me that all the LEDs work. Press it again, and I get a little dash button. I hit the plus button, and you can hear the motor cycling. If you open it up, you can see everything's turning now. So we should be good to go. Take this back downstairs and reinstall it. I already smeared Vaseline around the seal here where it screws onto the tank, and also inside the holes here where it goes onto the bypass valve. Tube in the middle of your mineral tank came up a little bit. You want to tap it down. It goes into gravel, just to make sure that that's down far enough that your head unit's going to screw on properly. And the center of the head unit slides onto that, and then we screw it on. Remember, you don't want to put a wrench on this. We were able to take it off without a wrench, so we don't want to put it on with a wrench. Just snug it up, and now we'll slide it back into place. You don't want to get carried away tightening these screws down. They're just brass screws going into a brass fitting. All they're doing is holding the unit against the bypass valve. Gonna hook up the little wire here. That does something, not really sure what. And plug it back in. It wasn't too hard to rebuild that valve and get it back to working conditions. I hope you found this video helpful. Maybe you'll take a minute to click the subscribe button, maybe hit the thumbs up, hit the bell so you'll get notifications when I put out future videos like this. Thanks for watching.